The words caught in my throat midway through. The microphone picked up the stuttering hush as I blinked at the auditorium, the sweat building on my palms. I saw my uncle rise from the folding chair in the fourth row, his lips pressed in a condescending line. My mother sat stiffly, her hands clasped as if in warning not to laugh or cry, but I tried again. I felt my face flush, cursing the tremble in my voice. The echo in the high school gym disguised nothing. My classmates squirmed in their seats, not even half listening, thinking of parties and futures and the tight itch of cheap polyester robes. The smell of old sweat and fritters from the snack stand mingled with age-old varnish trapped in floorboards. In this room, even dreams sounded thin. What I really want to do, I swallowed, but the hush held. I saw fingers playing absently at the edge of phones, the bright red of my father's left ear, the one that always reddened when he was embarrassed on my behalf. A cough sliced the air. My uncle again trying not to meet my eye, his gaze fixed somewhere just above me, at the empty corner of the gym where basketball banners hung faded and outdated. I pushed, feeling the room retract, to be a sound designer. A few faces perked up, the uncertain, polite smile of my English teacher, the frown of the principal, the barely masked amusement of my older sister. In the back, Pedro, my best and almost only friend, grinned encouragement, but I couldn't fix on him, not in the silence that followed. I heard someone giggle, a shrill, surprised note, and then a shuffle of feet and the scuff of metal chair legs scratching floor. "Sorry," the principal cut in, striding up with an awkward nod, her hand already out for the microphone. I let her take it. My ears burned so fiercely I thought steam must be rising from them. Clapping resumed, dutiful but slack, the kind reserved for lost causes. My speech had lasted maybe 45 seconds. Afterwards, the gym emptied in whirls of conversation, laughter trailing ahead of me as I found a column to lean against. I felt the sound around me as an ache, every step and shriek and fragment of song. My uncle approached me, his tie loosened, his voice heavy with forced patience. "Is that really what you want, Raphael?" He smiled the way you do at a toddler announcing there'll be an astronaut and a dinosaur. "Sound design, there's no real work in that, not in Curitiba, not here. Come work for your cousin at the office, My father didn't meet my eye. My mother squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "Bem, we just want you to be okay." My sister rolled her eyes. "People who do that sort of thing live in Sao Paulo or Rio or Hollywood." It was all the same as it had always been, gentle shoving toward the safe, the known. In our neighborhood, dreams existed in stories and telenovelas. Real life was steady jobs, a wife, a mortgage. Anything more was ridiculous, a phase to be outgrown. But for me, the idea had already solidified, a stubborn gravity centering itself in my chest. At night, I'd lie awake, reconstructing in my mind the soundscape of rain tapping the tin roof, the harmonics of passing cars on Avenida Republica Argentina, the distant pulse of trains, the velvet hush that sometimes rolled through after midnight. I dreamt in layers, footsteps in halls, the echo of a door, the cascading feedback of crowds at festivals. I wanted to turn the world's noise into music, pain into atmosphere, moments into memory. What I didn't have was a way to explain this, not to them, not even to myself, beyond the refusing to let go. The world, though, had never been less impressed. I did not come from money. College, even at the university here in Curitiba, was a fraught negotiation each semester, a balance between my father's pride and overtime hours and my mother's thrift, each real accounted for in a spiral notebook she guarded like a secret. When inevitably I dropped out after a year to apprentice at a small audio studio, everyone assumed it was over. "At least now you can get a steady job," my uncle said, relief plain. "Music is for weekends." One cousin offered me an entry-level position stacking boxes at his shipping firm, 8 hours, little pay, zero noise, but my own disappointment. I refused. The studio was a cramped second-floor affair with a battered sign, above a bakery that drowned our workspace in the smell of yeast and sugar. I fetched coffee, coiled cables, swept floors, and tried to absorb everything I could from Luis, the owner and only senior sound designer, who chain-smoked and swore constantly about kids with laptops ruining the craft. Nights glided into early mornings spent hunched over second-hand equipment, piecing together samples recorded on errands across the city, street vendors, dogs barking through fog, buses jolting over potholes. Most of what I made was strictly functional, overdubs for indie films, radio commercials, a short-lived podcast about cheese. But every now and then I built something I could be proud of. A scene in a local play where thunder crept through the theatre just as a character confessed his secret, the time I laid birdsong over a morning montage and the director wept. It wasn't magic, but it mattered, at least to me. I didn't tell my family much. When they asked, I minimized, I'm just helping, learning, or sometimes it's nothing yet. Pride lanced through me raw as nerve endings, but I knew better than to hand them ammunition. At home, conversations circled around everyone else's achievements, baby announcements, promotions, a neighbor's daughter engaged to a doctor. My mother sometimes sighed when I passed, as if she knew she ought to say something and couldn't quite find the words. Pedro, loyal as ever, visited when he could. He'd squeeze into the studio's corner with a thermos of black coffee, nodding through my explanations of the way glass rattled in wind versus footsteps on a parquet floor. He encouraged me to send clips to competitions, introduced me to friends of friends looking for sound for their YouTube channels. Still, I sensed even his patience thinning as the months dragged by, as I missed birthdays and parties as his own career in accounting took off. When Lewis finally retired, the studio limped along under a new owner, a tech startup guy with zero patience. I was laid off within weeks. The city blurred by in the smudge of disappointment, rain streaking windows, each day opening into silence. I took odd jobs, then waited tables, ran deliveries. But I saved every cent, recording city noises on my cheapest days, building a haphazard portfolio I emailed everywhere, film schools, post-production houses, radio, streaming services. I waited, I doubted, I worked through grief and rejection, rejections stacked as high as a building. The messages from family became predictable: come home for a while, try something practical, you don't have to prove anything. But I did. My last attempt was a speculative submission for a foreign production company rumored to be scouting for talent in Latin America. I knew logically hopes were slim, but I poured a month into that demo, layered thunder with soft voices, city sounds that flickered into laughter, into grief, into startling quiet. I tried for the first time to create something that wasn't just sound but emotion. I finished just before dawn, my hands shaking. Weeks passed, then a month. I started to forget about it, busying myself with more restaurant shifts, nights spent walking home in gentle drizzle. When the reply came, I nearly deleted it as spam. It was an invitation, an interview, then a project, and then, within a single feverish season, my work was being used on an indie film shot in Europe. I worked remotely from my tiny apartment in Curitiba, my days stretching from dusk to dawn, the hiss of the city outside fueling each composition. The film won awards. I was flown out, shaken between cultures and airports, but when I returned, contracts followed, projects for streaming platforms, commercials, even a few local films that allowed me to flex routes I'd nearly abandoned. I wasn't rich, but I was independent. My sound had found its audience, and with each success my past felt lighter, less like a wound, more like a promise kept to myself. Years slipped by. My sister married, left for the coast. My uncle retired, still running his mouth over long lunches. My father slowed, his back stooped from decades at the shop. My mother still attended mass and checked prices in supermarket leaflets. Sometimes Pedro called, mentioned seeing my name in the credits on some film or ad. I rarely watched the things myself, afraid it was a trick, afraid the sense of accomplishment would vanish with a single careless word. But it changed one simple spring when word came that an international production, one of my own, featuring sound work distinctly mine, would premiere at the festival held right here in Curitiba. For the first time, they wanted the crew to attend the closing night and had arranged a panel. They asked if I could assemble some examples of the sound design to break it down for an audience. I hesitated. The prospect of home scared me more than strangers ever had, but I said yes. I arrived at the theatre early, the nervous excitement clashing with an old dread. The place was familiar, the Teatro Guarira with its sweeping modernist lines, its shadowed balconies silent with dust and ghosts of conversations. I remembered coming here as a child for school trips, nose pressed to velvet as symphonies washed over us. It smelled of polish and heavy, aging curtains. I was greeted by the festival director, a brisk woman with grey-streaked hair and a clipped accent. She ushered me backstage where I met the other panelists. There was a translator, an assistant director, a film scholar, but it was when I stepped out, blinking into the harsh lights, that I saw them, my family clustered in the third row, my mother in her best dress, her face knotted in anticipation. My father, wary but proud, his hands knuckled white, my uncle in a suit, hair combed, a look both uncertain and expectant. My sister, mocking and affectionate at the same time, had her phone ready. Even Pedro had come, slipping me a wink. The old lines of skepticism had tightened, but tonight curiosity shone through. I felt the old sting, but I stood my ground. The hall filled. The moderator introduced us, then me, a local to Curitiba sound designer of international acclaim. Applause, respectful this time, washed over me. When my turn came, I explained, voice steady, how the sound design for the film was built, how memory and culture color the way we inhabit a world through its noises. I said, scanning the rows, catching my uncle's eye, to stitch together familiar sounds, things from here, from my neighborhood, into the fabric of a story set half a world away. Maybe to show that home follows you, even if you try to outgrow it. Then came the moment. The moderator handed me a small remote. Raphael will show us a few scenes with and without his work, so you can see or hear the difference. I nodded. The screen came down blank at first. I cued the simplest scene, a kitchen in northern France, a girl making coffee, her father shuffling in. First, the raw footage. Harsh clattering, the whine of electricals. Then the same scene with my audio, water poured, a distant bird call I'd recorded near Osorio Street, the gentle creak of a chair borrowed from my parents' home, even a faint echo of church bells. The crowd leaned in, stillness holding. I kept going, scenes gradually layered, the city in rain, bustling markets, thunderstorms, laughter cut with heartbreak, hurt stitched with warmth. I explained how, even in places far from Brazil, I'd tucked pieces of home, hints of a bus horn, the unique way voices echo off old stucco buildings in Curitiba after rain. People whispered. Someone gasped, recognizing a street vendor's cry in a foreign language dubbed lightly over French, irreverent and universal. At the panel's end, applause rose, not polite but thunderous, rising, holding, spilling over the rows. Afterwards, in the lobby, glasses of cheap wine, the persistent shimmer of new music playing over speakers, I felt my uncle approach me. He paused, as if the right words might be caught in his throat. I heard our bell, he started, from the yellow house in that scene with the boy, the way it used to ring at lunch, did you? I did, I said simply, that's where I learned what sound could mean. He held my shoulder, sober and smaller than I'd ever seen him. We never understood, he said, voice breaking with regret, but I see now, we were wrong. My mother stepped in, awe in her eyes, her tears shining proud. She hugged me harder than she had in years, the lines of care on her face softening. Word spread through the community. Family I hadn't seen since childhood appeared to shake my hand, to marvel in tentative pride. Even neighbors who once rolled their eyes at my strange, endless recording sessions nodded approvingly now. Pedro clapped me on the back, grinning. You made them hear it, Rafa, you really did. The night carried on, voices mingling, drifting outside beneath the orange streetlights and the slight nip of autumn. Walking home, the city hummed and hissed, familiar yet new. I felt at last not the ache of rejection, but a quiet dignity, a sense of having brought something back, not just for myself, but for everyone who had waited to understand. And that night, lying in the half-dark of my old bedroom, I heard the city all around me. The hush of cars on distant streets, a lone dog barking, laughter floating from some window, my mother's voice drifting in prayer. All the sounds of home. I let myself be held by it, at peace at last, with all that had led me here and the echo of dreams that no longer seemed so ridiculous at all.